Wait, what? So this is not the Spock that we know and love, the unemotional, the pragmatic, the cool TOS Spock. Nope, this is the new, rebooted Disco Spock, who'll probably rock up listening to heavy metal tracks on his earphones as he dances with Tilly drinking Saurian brandy. But hello my fellow explorers and welcome to another The Week in Sci-Fi. It's Imon here, thank you for joining me as we explore the strange new worlds of science fiction and science fantasy. If this is your first time on the good ship Final Frontier, then make sure you click that subscribe button and smash that notification bell. Set course for the second star on the right. These are the top stories in the world of sci-fi this week. Engage. And our first story for this week is another Marvel series on the chopping block. Yes, last week we saw the demise of Iron Fist from Netflix, and this week we see another Marvel Netflix collaboration dumped from the streaming network, and this one is a little bit more of a shock. Yes, it's Luke Cage. Now, announcement for season 3 was thought to be a foregone conclusion. In fact, the writers' room had been working for over 6 months developing new scripts, plus the actors were still under contract. So at this stage it really looks like there is plenty of turmoil between Marvel and Netflix, as maybe Netflix looks to shore up its bottom line because the show is certainly expensive. This leaves Daredevil, Jessica Jones and The Punisher, but Daredevil fans start to worry because season 4 has not yet been greenlit, so perhaps it is next for the chopping board. From a show facing burial to a show that seemingly may be being raised from the ashes. Yes, if I said to you the Rumbaldi device, would that ring any bells? How about if I added J.J. Abrams and the name Sydney Bristow? Any clues? Well, if you think back about a decade, then yes, the show Alias, the show that basically put JJ and I believe Jennifer Garner into the limelight, is possibly about to return. Now, Jennifer Garner, who played Sydney Bristow in the series, has heard an Alias reboot is in talks. Now, she doesn't know anything else and has not yet been approached, which just suggests that perhaps the series is in very early talks. Now, my hope personally is that it isn't a reboot. I'd rather have the Sydney Bristow that I grew up with. I'd rather have her appearing as a recurring character in a sequel. If you're an Alias fan, what would you prefer? From one possible sequel to a sequel to end all sequels. Yes, the untitled Avengers IV has finished filming. Filming has wrapped, with Russo brothers tweeting a very cryptic image. Now, personally, I think it looks like one of possibly two things. The first one is Adam Warlock's casket. Now, in the comics, Adam Warlock is intimately linked to the Infinity Gauntlet, and we saw his casket at the end of the Guardians of the Galaxy in an end credit scene. But I think it's very unlikely we'll see a completely new character feature in Infinity War Part 2. It's not like we don't have enough characters as it is, although admittedly the character count was halved at the end of Infinity War, but we know Captain Marvel will feature strongly, with her story being set up in a standalone film released, I think it's a few months before Infinity War. So that leaves another theory, and we might be gaining a captain, but we're also definitely losing a captain. Perhaps it's a foregone conclusion, but that casket could be that of one Steve Rogers. Which will be such a sad end to somebody that I grew to absolutely love. Or perhaps it's something else entirely, who knows? Well, perhaps some do, as an Avengers IV teaser trailer information has apparently leaked on Reddit. Now, I prefer ignorance when it comes to Avengers Infinity War. I literally want to disengage my brain, so the first time I go into the theatre and I'm eating some popcorn, that's when I want to know what happens in Avengers 4 and nothing else. So if you're interested in finding out a bit more though, feel free to look at that link. I'm going to put it in the description below and you can check it out. Just don't let me know what happens. Oh, and while you're there, click that subscribe bell please, thank you. From the Marvel Cinematic Universe to the DC Extended Universe, which recently had a shot in the arm when James Gunn moved over to write and possibly direct Suicide Squad 2. But things are still in a state of flux, and it seems the Flash standalone movie is expected to be pushed back to 2021. Although never officially confirmed, the Flash film was supposed to start production in March 2019. However, Ezra Miller, who plays Flash, is expected to be filming Fantastic Beasts, which is shooting around the same time, so production will have to wait. And this isn't the only film facing an uncertain future, with both Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill expected to leave their roles as Batman and Superman respectively, which leads me to think that the entire universe is perhaps undergoing another reboot. Perhaps it's something that the universe actually needs now that Zack Snyder has left, but I'd be interested to know how you feel about it. And talking of things that might upset fans, listen to this quote from Alex Kurtzman regarding Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. "What gets me so excited about the story that we get to tell with Spock this season is that it's the unwritten chapter of Spock. So far, so good, but wait for this. This is not the Spock that you know from the beginning of TOS. This is pre-TOS. He is not that formed Vulcan yet." Wait, what? So this is not the Spock that we know and love, the unemotional, the pragmatic, the cool TOS Spock. Nope, this is the new, rebooted Disco Spock, who'll probably rock up listening to heavy metal tracks on his earphones as he dances with Tilly drinking Saurian brandy. But I actually am being deliberately provocative there, because there is a strong rationale for the differences we are likely to see in Spock that's in TOS and pre-TOS Spock. Okay, and these differences are canon. And I will hopefully go into that in an upcoming video. Now, one of the things that most annoyed fans was probably the new look Klingons, and actually the new looks Klingon starships as well. Now, one of the things about it was the lack of Klingon hair. Not to talk about the rest of the features, there is precedence obviously in rebooting the Klingons. We saw that from TOS into TNG, but with TNG, DS9, Voyager and Enterprise using pretty similar looking Klingons, it was a surprise to say the least to see that the Klingons had changed so much in Disco. So Season 2, the trailer has pretty much shown that the hair is coming back, which I think should appease some of the fans. And we have an even better look at what the Klingons look like, with Mary Chieffer, who plays L'Rell, tweeting the following. And I'm wondering if that is enough to appease fans. I mean, I won't even go into the starships because those look so different, and I love the original ones, but you know, I didn't mind the new Klingons so much. And I did mention this in an earlier video because there is a strong rationale for why the Klingons in Discovery don't have hair, and it was clearly deliberate, because if you look at the very first episode and you look up the Klingon casket, you can see that within the casket there is certainly something that looks very much like hair. The explanation that has been given for the Klingons shaving off their hair was that the first bat'leth to be created was created by Kailash, who took a lock of his hair and stuck it in a volcano, and then I think he put it in a lake to forge into a sword, and that sword was the bat'leth. Okay, so the rationale is that they shave their head, i.e. take off the entire lock, in a time of battle, and now that the war is over, there is no need for them to be shaving their hair. Now, this is obviously something we didn't see in later generations of Klingons, but you know, culture changes, and this was the rationale for the Disco era Klingons. And staying with controversial Star Trek, when DS9 first aired all those years ago with no starship, a non-Federation crew, and plenty of conflict amongst that crew, it was, I think, widely regarded as the black sheep of the Star Trek family. Now roll forward 25 years and the perception has, I believe, completely changed, and it's widely regarded as one of the best in the series. And in fact it was a pioneer in TV in general with its non-episodic narrative story arcs. Now Ira Steven Behr, who was the showrunner at the time, started a campaign last year, the DS9 documentary, which pretty much brought together all of the people who worked on the show, including much of the actors. And the DS9 docs had its world premiere in Birmingham in the UK over the last few days, and the feedback has been unanimous in its praise. And as part of the release they put together a writer's room who came up with ideas for what would be episode 1 of a mythical season 8. And this is a sneak peek of what they have come up with. Yes, the USS Emmett Till is Captain Ezri Dax's starship, and I'm absolutely loving it, although I do question why a starship would need 4 nacelles. A full model is forthcoming, so I'm really looking forward to seeing it in all its glory. What do you think? Dislike? Like? Love? We have some fantastic news for those who are fans, i.e. anybody who has seen the fantastic movie A Quiet Place. Now obviously when the big numbers were hit for the film, Paramount greenlit a sequel pretty much immediately. However, John Krasinski, whose wife Emily Blunt co-stars in the film, originally told them to find somebody else to get involved, preferring not to work on the sequel. However, he's obviously been thinking about it a lot because he's had an idea spark in his head and he is now developing the sequel. Yay! Now with the aliens' weakness now exposed, I'm wondering whether it will involve a fight back from the humans. If so, I feel it might be a very different film from the original, which might not be so great. Whatever does happen, perhaps the family will now have moved closer to that waterfall, which would have masked the cry of that baby. So if you hadn't noticed, a lot of those images were screenshots from my Instagram profile. Please follow me on social media where I post daily updates, both on Instagram, on Facebook and on Twitter. Hal opened the pod bay doors because I want to talk to my viewers. Are you happy with the updated Klingon look? Are you worried about Daredevil now that both Iron Fist and Luke Cage have been axed? And are you an Alias fan and pleased to hear about news of a reboot? These were the top stories in the world of science fiction and science fantasy. Subscribe to join me as I bask on a beach in Raisa. Peace.